Alrighty, another week, another chapter of Peak. This week's chapter was of course amazing, don't get me wrong, but with how this arc has currently been going, this was a much more simple, straightforward chapter. Instead of introducing world-breaking plot developments and having very intense character interactions to break down, this chapter was mostly just to move the plot forward and continued connecting all the different characters and plot lines that we've had building up. But don't get me wrong, that's good stuff. That's what I'm here for. But with those little thoughts out of the way, let's dive right into the chapter recap. We start off in third Prince Zhang's room, where we see his Nen Beast for the first time in a while, which is a huge win for me, because his Nen Beast is one of my favorite designs, top 3 for sure. Haven't decided where in the top 3 it is, but it's in there, best believe it. But we see his guards explaining a peace treaty between Kurapika and Tubeppa, which has also been extended to him. Zhang is told that in the event that Tubeppa and Wobble are the last ones standing, Wobble and Tubeppa will withdraw from the succession war, and the problems with that statement will be addressed in a moment, but it's also revealed that Kurapika has requested two of Zhang's guards to remain with him for the remainder of the succession war. We then quickly switch to Prince Tubeppa, and we see her being informed that Kurapika has accepted her peace treaty. However, he has added the condition that whenever he goes to her room, that the 8th Queen and Wobble and two of Zhang's aforementioned men accompany him. Tubeppa agrees to the conditions and even says that it helps their cause. While this is being discussed, we see Rihan in the room observing, which is very important to know that he's there, and also awesome for me because I love Rihan because he's my favorite non-super important side character. We switch back to Prince Zhang, and he hands the guard informing him of all this information. He hands him a second coin that's dispensed out of his Nen Beast. Zhang tells the guard to keep it and it'll bring him good luck. And then he has two important thoughts to himself. The first is thinking about how in the peace treaty with Kurapika, it states that Wobble and Tubeppa would withdraw from the succession war, but Zhang wonders if it's even possible to surrender. While it seems clear to us, the reader, that the succession war doesn't end until only one prince is left alive, it seems that the princes themselves feel that the exact rules are vague. We also saw this at the very beginning of the arc when Prince Camilla asked her father to clarify what the sole remaining heir was. I'm not sure if I'm quoting that right. With all that said, this is why Prince Zhang is unsure if this peace treaty has any real meaning, because although it's currently very beneficial, simply withdrawing from the succession war, given the best case scenario, that might not be possible. His second thought is confusion revolving around the coins that his Nen Beast dispenses. He thought that after holding a coin for 10 days, something would happen, but nothing did. And this is just a cool little note because it just goes to show that these princes really have no idea what their Nen Beasts do, let alone how Nen works. To an extent, it varies prince to prince. We then switch back to Prince Tubeppa, who's also having some important thoughts. The first is that she thinks because Tserriednich didn't come to the banquet where Melody had played her song, that it means that her little treaty that she had with him can't be trusted. Which I don't think should be news to us, because I think we all knew that Tserriednich couldn't be trusted with anything at any point in time. Her second thought is about First Prince Benjamin's guards, and about how they're targeting her, which is very true, considering that Rihan is right fucking there, but she goes on to think about how she needs to redirect their attention to Zhang instead. She's playing a little slippery game here, but I like it. We then focus on Rihan, who sees Tubeppa's Nen Beast appear, and he wonders if it's connected to her signing the peace treaty, because it appeared right as she finished signing it. It also makes him think that her Nen Beast might be a conditional type. We then switch perspective to Balsamilko, who's getting up to no good. Hidden in his shoe is a case containing a biological weapon called TSK-17, which he says is one of Kakin's mass murder weapons, and I'm so glad to know that Kakin is just as peaceful of a country as I thought. Anyway, we get a nice long explanation of what this weapon is. It's a weaponized virus that mimics the symptoms of gastroenteritis, that's a mouthful, or more commonly known as the stomach flu. And those symptoms are inflammation of intestines, which causes vomiting, diarrhea, you also get fever, loss of appetite, essentially a cocktail of symptoms that have the potential to kill someone very quickly. But the main point of Balsamilko explaining how this weaponized virus can be mistaken for the stomach flu is to express two important things. The first of which is directly stated. Because the virus will appear as the stomach flu, common procedure will tell doctors to quarantine the infected person, which Balsamilko says will keep unnecessary deaths down. The second thing is more so implied, but if doctors think they're treating the stomach flu, by the time they realize it's something far more dangerous and life-threatening, it'll likely be far too late. He then goes into explaining how the virus structure is very weak, so it only lasts 30 seconds in the air. But if someone inhales it within that 30-second window, they'll have organ failure within half a day. He also says that one of the flaws of the weapon is that the effectiveness decreases drastically the further away you are from the target. However, if you're in a room with no wind blowing and you're within 0.5 to 1 meter away from the target, the virus has a 100% success rate. Balsamilko takes out a vial, arms it, and places it in his shoe, and we see him holding a detonator of sorts. It's then revealed to us that his target is 9th Prince Hulkenberg. We then switch to my favorite character in this entire arc, 4th Prince Tserriednich, who's playing a game on his phone while on the treadmill and talking to Salkov. Presumably, Tserriednich has started a more advanced version of the training we last saw him doing with Salkov. Previously, Tserriednich wanted to close his eyes and enter Zetsu in less than a second, but this version of the training seems to include performing Zetsu while having multiple distractions involved. And here we see Tserriednich finally achieving Zetsu in under 10 seconds. And while Salkov is certainly not a standard for a high-class Nen user, it's still concerning when he says it took him a whole year to reach what Tserriednich has achieved after less than 2 weeks. He gets even more specific and says what Tserriednich just achieved today took him half a year. We also get a very casual drop of information here that Salkov says that he's learned Zetsu since birth, which, because of last chapter, more or less confirms him as one of Beyond Netero's cursed children. Which, that's very interesting to know, but on top of that, he learned Zetsu at birth? Yet the rate in which Tserriednich is learning Zetsu blows away what Salkov ever did. Salkov, seeing Tserriednich's terrifying power and potential, he thinks about how Tserriednich will use every shape and form of his power to achieve his desires. Desires that we as the reader know very well are not anything good. He wants to take over the world and separate people into useful and useless trash. So scary guy. And Salkov is like, yeah, I gotta do something about this guy. And as of now, it just sounds like he's itching to get himself killed, but maybe he can pull something off. Salkov then starts thinking about Tserriednich's Nen ability, and he thinks about how he spawns a second Nen beast after he activates Zetsu. And he says how even for a specialist, it breaks all the rules. Salkov ends this thought by saying he's making all of these assumptions about the second Nen beast. He's making all these assumptions based off of information he got from Theta. However, this was after Tserriednich's main Nen beast attacked her, so Salkov thinks that she could be getting manipulated by the Nen beast and could be feeding Salkov bad information. Then another one of Tserriednich's bodyguards, Vantane, comes over and begins talking about Melody. He says how the Justice Bureau has decided to keep Melody in custody even longer because they don't believe her alibi. The day of Kacho's death and Fugetsu's attempted escape, that whole scenario. Vantane goes into how Benjamin also doesn't believe Melody's alibi and he's posted guards to help watch her. Tserriednich tells Vantane to keep visiting Melody and to work on getting her on their side. As a little reminder, Tserriednich, while still unsure of the exact details, is fascinated by Melody's Nen ability and is intrigued by its power and potential. He also makes a point to tell Vantane not to let Benjamin gain the upper hand. This little Tserriednich moment ends with Salkov thinking about how Tserriednich is running, playing a game, and talking about strategy while trying to enter Zetsu, and this is all apparently something that could only be done by someone who's trained for, get this, 10 years. I'm just sick to my stomach. We then switched perspectives once again to Melody and Kacho. For those who forgot, the real Kacho is long since dead, and what we see now is essentially a ghost. Kacho had explained previously that she thinks her Nen Beast brought her back as a ghost so she can protect her sister Fugetsu, or her Nen Beast became her. The point is that this Kacho can walk through walls and whatnot like a ghost, but still has her memories, emotions, all that stuff. Anyway, Kacho shows Melody a picture of a bug bite-like mark on Fugetsu's back, and they both talk about how the mark is new, and Melody explains that this mark could be from an enemy attack, the same one that's responsible for Fugetsu being able to seemingly use her Nen ability an unlimited amount of times, and also the reason why she has curses following her. Melody also explains that this unlimited use of her ability is more so the use of a copied version of her ability from the enemy. Melody also goes into how Fugetsu's ability could be like a drug to her, and that she very well may be addicted to using it. Melody also says that at first she thought that one of the princes who came to talk to her had put the curse on Fugetsu and would come to negotiate some way, but she says that she was wrong. And if she really was wrong, then that clears Prince Zhang and Prince Tserriednich as culprits for who's attacking Fugetsu. Another thing Melody explains is that Fugetsu's body is getting so weak that she won't last for more than a few days, and that they need to find the Nen user attacking her and do it quickly. This leads to Kacho suggesting the 7th Prince Luzurus is responsible because he's associated with the mafia and regularly pushes drugs. Essentially, she associates the fact that he pushes drugs with the fact that Fugetsu is experiencing a drug addiction situation with her ability. This then leads to Kaiser interjecting and saying if they're going to pursue Prince Luzurus, they need a plan. We then get 3 pages explaining what their plan is, and in short, Kacho will write letters that will be delivered to the remaining princes. Letters that are supposed to be her final words. But more specifically, the plan is for Kaiser to escort Fugetsu with the hopes that not only will they potentially learn some information when interacting with Prince Luzurus, but Fugetsu's ability allows her to open a door to anywhere she's been before, so delivering a letter to each prince would potentially give them access to each prince's room as well. And then, if it turns out that Luzurus is the culprit, the plan will be for Melody to use her ability to incapacitate him. They'll then have Fugetsu open one of her doors, and Kaiser will carry Luzurus to the lifeboat room, and they'll kill him. And their plan is that the story will be suffering from an overdose, the prince made plans to flee the ship, and passed away from a sudden heart attack. We also get another quick bit, and this keeps coming up, about how Kaiser is in love with Melody, and Melody still doesn't believe it. And she worries that even though his heartbeat sounds steady as if he's not lying, maybe there's a way he is in fact lying, or maybe he doesn't even know he's lying because someone is manipulating him. Melody then says that regardless, she must maintain their relationship for Fugetsu's sake because he's helping a lot. We then see Kaiser, Fugetsu, and Steiner, and if you forgot who Steiner was, he's in charge of learning pretty much everything there is to know about the Dark Continent. He's supposed to be the information guide. Anyway, they all begin delivering Kacho's fake death letters to the princes. They first go to Benjamin's room, and at the beginning, the guard wanted to hand the letter off to Benjamin, but Kaiser convincingly plays his role and gets Fugetsu in to deliver the letter personally. Fugetsu enters Benjamin's room, and he immediately notices the curses surrounding her and notes that they're severely weakening her. As she approaches Benjamin to hand him his letter, Benjamin's Nen Beast kind of growls at her, and it seems to scare away the curses. And unfortunately, in this whole interaction, we get nothing that even hints at what his Nen Beast ability might be, but back to the story. This all leads to Benjamin thinking about how the curses surrounding Fugetsu are low level, and wonders if the curses latched onto her due to her broken heart from Kacho's death. Benjamin starts reading the letter, and as he does this, he and Kaiser engage in a little conversation where Benjamin acts worried about the whereabouts of his bodyguard Muse, but we already know that Prince Camilla killed him, and so does Benjamin. Also, while reading the letter, Benjamin lets it slip out that he's considering enacting martial law given the legal opportunity. Kaiser notes that this confirms that Benjamin is a man who would abuse his power given the opportunity, but we already knew that. As they leave Benjamin's room, Kaiser says how it was a good idea to talk to Benjamin while Balsamilko was away, very likely poisoning Hulkenberg. We then see Fugetsu give letters to Tubeppa and to Prince Tyson. Finally, we get to Prince Luzurus, and Luzurus tells Fugetsu that pretty much, yeah, it sucks to hear about your big sis. As if that's not also his sister, but all of the princes are like that. Well, most of them. Luzurus reads the letter and then says how Kacho went out with a bang and asks Fugetsu if Kacho ever mentioned the letters. He then hands the letter to Kaiser and says, as someone from the Justice Bureau, he should read it too. And this is because the letter contains allegations that Tserriednich is basically a horrible guy, and Kaiser's like, well, as long as it's just in this letter, it's just rumors. Even though that he's the one who leaked the information that's in all of these different letters being handed out to princes. And speaking on that, we get a quick flashback where we learn more about the plan that Kaiser, Melody, and Kacho cooked up. Essentially, Kaiser has a bunch of dirt on all of the princes, and he leaked various parts of that info to certain princes in an attempt to shake up their dynamics. Or in other words, to try to get them to beef with each other. We then go back to Luzurus, and he talks about how it's kind of weird for Kacho to say in his letter, which was, she doesn't care who wins as long as it's not Tserriednich. Luzurus then shows he's far more intelligent than at least I first thought, and he starts thinking about how the letter is a little suspect, and he thinks that the letters are just meant to cause tension between the remaining princes and he'll have to keep an eye out. Smart guy. But overall, I would just like to note this, that overall in this entire scene, even though it was supposed to be like a test of, is he the one attacking Fugetsu? He was, if anything, he didn't really care. But overall, he just had a very relaxed and chill demeanor, which makes sense because he's probably high as hell. No joke, he's been hotboxing that room for 10 days straight now, if I'm counting days right. Kaiser and Fugetsu then leave the room, and Kaiser tells Fugetsu that she's doing good. And then we once again see her curses, but then they disperse suddenly as Basho appears. He comes to give her like a talisman of sorts that ward off low-level curses, but after giving it to her, he thinks about how it won't help her for long, it's more so just to buy time, and it's not going to do anything unless if they get to the bottom of what's really going on. We then get to the last page of the chapter, and Melody, Kacho, and Kaiser talk about how they should come up with another plan in case Luzurus isn't the one behind Fugetsu's curse. Kaiser then gets into how Prince Hulkenberg has fallen ill, but once he's awake, he wants to deliver him his letter. Finally, Melody thinks something very, very interesting. She thinks to himself, we've given the 9th prince all of the information, Benjamin's secret, Tserriednich's evil doings, and even about the truth of Hulkenberg's own birth. I'll get into that in a moment, don't you worry. But we then see Kurapika reading his letter, / the letter for Wobble, which is just asking him to come up with a plan to end the succession war so no more princes have to die. So overall, this was a very entertaining chapter. Like I said at the beginning, nothing super insane happened, but it was very fun and entertaining to see a lot of storylines that we've been following and a lot of different characters we've been following. It was very nice to see everything continue to further connect. But let's get into my more specific thoughts, and let's start off with what Melody said about the truth of Hulkenberg's birth. The obvious explanation for what she meant is that Hulkenberg is the child Longhi was talking about last chapter, meaning that Hulkenberg is the child of Beyond Netero. The support for this idea is very solid. Not only does this being said right after the events of last chapter support this idea, but also Hulkenberg being Beyond's son would kind of support some consistent themes we've seen with Beyond. For example, the one part of my Beyond analysis that still remains true is that Beyond likes challenges. In fact, he likes creating obstacles for himself. So on a thematic level, Hulkenberg, who at least started as a man who didn't even want to participate in the succession war, if Beyond's end goal is to have a child that wins the succession war, that in itself is an obstacle. Furthermore, it's possible that Beyond was anticipating or preparing for this possibility that his child wouldn't want to partake in the succession war, and that's why he created so many suicide bomber children with these curses, so that if he had a child who did not want to partake in the succession war, he could just use his children with these Nen curses to take out the other princes, forcefully making his child the king of Kakin. There's also just the fact that along with Tserriednich, Hulkenberg is unusually strong, as well as learning Nen very fast. Not to the same extent as Tserriednich, but without a doubt, he is unusually strong. And overall, it's just very obvious that Hulkenberg is Beyond's son. But here I go. It is so obvious, in fact, that I feel like it's definitely not Hulkenberg. I think that there's some other mystery surrounding his birth that will be revealed. I will say, I'm probably wrong. The pacing of the story is increasing a good bit, and dragging out this whole who is the child of Beyond would probably cause this little storyline to take longer than it needs to if it's not Hulkenberg. However, like I said, it's so obvious, I almost feel like it can't be him, and I always prefer the more complicated route to the simple, but that's because I'm weird, and I'm just throwing it out there. And speaking of things being too obvious and misdirections, I also am gonna say that Prince Luzurus being responsible for Fugetsu's curse is also misdirection. Once again, same thing applies. If it's not Luzurus, it has the potential to drag this little plotline out longer than it needs to, which means I'm probably wrong. But if I just say, yeah, it's Luzurus, that's boring. Anyone can figure that out, so let me pitch another idea. I think it's a little too obvious that it's him, and I know that Luzurus's Nen Beast has the ability to set traps by materializing whatever the target desires, and while you might be like, hey Peaster, that sounds like exactly what's happening to Fugetsu, I'd argue that simply being able to use her ability non-stop is not her desire. It might be a desire, but the way I interpreted the ability is it's the desire, like the number one thing. Now, I don't have an answer as to what Fugetsu's true desire would be, but I do feel pretty sure it's not spamming her ability. Also, when Fugetsu went to meet with Luzurus, I didn't get the sense that he did or would mean her any harm. He seemed to have what I'ma just call a chill feeling towards her. He didn't like her per se, but he definitely didn't seem to have any type of dislike. And mind you, Nen Beasts work independently from their hosts based off of desires. If Luzurus doesn't desire to harm Fugetsu, his Nen Beast won't harm her. There's also the fact that Togashi went out of his way to insert the point that Melody, Kacho, and Kaiser are coming up with a plan for what if Luzurus isn't the culprit. Although Togashi has said he's gotten better, I don't think he'd waste his time writing and drawing out a scene that would have no real importance. There's also the fact that if we were to kill off Luzurus soon in this scenario, it's gonna make the Mafia War on the lower floors a lot more complicated, and while it does have the potential to speed things up down there, it could also have the reverse effect. So all I'm gonna say is I don't think Hulkenberg is Beyond's son, and I don't think Luzurus is the one attacking Fugetsu. Let's take a little detour and talk about someone much less important, Balsamilko and the TSK-17 bioweapon. It appears that he used it effectively against Hulkenberg, considering Kaiser said that Hulkenberg had suddenly fallen ill. My only thing about this situation is I just think it's really weird that it all happened off screen. I hope that if Hulkenberg was affected by the TSK-17 virus, I just hope that we get some kind of flashback to at least see it, because it just feels very strange that it happened off screen, at least to me. But that's all I really gotta say about that. On to Prince Benjamin. In chapter 400, Kaiser had a conversation with Steiner about what may happen if Prince Benjamin enacts martial law, and he gets into how overall, not a good situation. Then, in chapter 402, Kaiser's having a conversation with Prince Benjamin, and he says how, given the opportunity, he would enact martial law. So it seems like we are supposed to be worried about Benjamin using martial law. My only thing about it is I'm not worried about it affecting the first tier and affecting the succession war directly. I think that if martial law is declared, all of the chaos is going to be on the lower floors, like where the Phantom Troop are and where the Mafia War is ongoing. Then on to a quick thing about Rihan and Prince Tubeppa's Nenbeast. I find it slightly odd that Tubeppa's Nenbeast revealed itself in front of Rihan of all people, because it's really almost as if it would be okay to reveal itself to anyone except Rihan. And because Tubeppa is very smart and implied to be like genius level types of smart, her Nenbeast should not be dumb. Her Nenbeast should be very smart. So I am holding out hope that it didn't just make a terrible mistake and it actually did it on purpose because it knows something. Fingers crossed that this is leading towards the direction of Prince Tubeppa's Nenbeast killing off Rihan, because Rihan's a huge problem. But if this is the start of Rihan being able to kill off Prince Tubeppa's Nenbeast, I will be shocked. I will be shocked that someone so smart had a Nenbeast so dumb. The second to last thing I want to talk about is this little trio of potential conflicts we have with Kurapika, Prince Tubeppa, and Tserriednich. I believe last chapter, when this whole alliance between Kurapika and Tubeppa was initially formed, I believe it was a seed being planted for the future confrontation between Kurapika and Prince Tserriednich. I believe in this chapter, when Tubeppa expressed that she can no longer trust Tserriednich, I think that was that seed being watered. While specifics, I can't say for sure, but the big idea of the direction I think we're headed is Tubeppa is going to get really scared of Tserriednich. She is going to try to basically do a preemptive attack, which is going to backfire. Tserriednich's going to get pissed and start coming at her. Tubeppa's going to ask Kurapika for help, and that will be the main catalyst that gets Kurapika to interact with Prince Tserriednich. My question to myself and to you, when Kurapika finally comes across Tserriednich, what is going to happen? Kurapika knows who Tserriednich is. He knows that Tserriednich is the one with the last eyes of the Kurta clan. Kurapika was so hell-bent on gathering all the eyes that he gave up hunting down the Phantom Troop entirely until he got all those eyes. So when Kurapika comes across the guy who has the last of those eyes, is Kurapika going to be able to keep his cool? Is he still going to stay dedicated to protecting the 8th Queen and Prince Wobble? Or is he going to kind of go cuckoo and lose it a little bit and get consumed by his rage? While everything I've read in this arc so far tells me that Kurapika will stay loyal and truthful to protecting Prince Wobble and the Queen, my gut says that his rage will consume him. But we're going to have to see. You let me know what you think is going to happen. And speaking of Prince Tserriednich, I'm going to finish this video off with just hyping him up even more. I cannot express enough how terrifying Tserriednich is. Not in the sense of, ooh, I got goosebumps and I'm like shivering in my boots type of scared, but the who is going to stop him type of scared. With where I see Tserriednich going, it's going to take a Jing or a Beyond or someone on that level to kill this guy. And what really makes him a character that I look at and I'm like, oh my God, someone needs to kill this guy. They need to take this guy out, is because through and through, he is a monster. I believe with all my heart that there is no redeemable quality about Tserriednich. There is no humanity in him at all. He is through and through a monster that is a genius, a Nen prodigy, someone who's achieved more in 11 days than an average person can do in 10 years. He is continuously doing something that we're told shouldn't be possible. Not only does he have a ton of aura, not only is he a specialist, not only does he learn incredibly quickly, and not only does he have a guardian Nen beast, he has a Nen ability that breaks the rules of what we thought was possible. But that ability allows Tserriednich to transport essentially into a different dimension for 10 seconds where he can change the outcome of whatever circumstance he finds himself in. And then after those 10 seconds, reality warps into the product of his dimension. He has a reality warping ability, something we've never seen in Hunter x Hunter aside from debatably Aluka, but that's not really reality warping what she did for Gon. Although there is an argument that she could, as far as things that we've seen, no one has a reality warping ability. And what's crazy, what really blows my mind and makes me think, oh my god, this guy is terrifying, one of, if not the most broken Nen ability by far, dare I say, in this series belongs to the most monstrous character. I will never fully be able to express how insane of a person Tserriednich is in terms of how strong he is and how much potential he has, but also in his mental state, he is not okay in that noggin. I also will never be able to express how much I like him as a character. Anyway, with my glazing out of the way, overall, that chapter was awesome. It was super fun. I had a great time reading it, and I can't wait for the next one. So I'll see you all next time, hopefully much sooner next time around. Enjoy!